speaks. If you're someone who observes more than you speak, you've probably heard this more than once, that you're too quiet, too shy, that you need to loosen up, participate more, speak up more, that there's something wrong with the way you are. There you are at a meeting, a party, a family lunch, reading the room, noticing every detail, while everyone else talks nonstop. And inevitably, someone turns to you and asks, with that look, "Why are you being so quiet?"
Shy.
As if silence were a
Cold.
flaw.
Antisocial.
But you're not
You're
shy.
not.
You're not cold.
strong and amazing.
And you're definitely
You're
not
loved.
antisocial.
Understanding
Here's what no one
how
tells
your
you.
brain
You're doing
processes
something that most people
sensory
around you
input
simply can't do.
helps you
And psychology
find
doesn't just validate
patterns
this.
over
It has a
time
name for it.
and
In
learn
fact,
to
there are 3
respond
specific
more
capabilities that people like you
slowly and
develop.
effectively.
3 things that those who speak more than they listen will never access in the same way. We'll get to each of them. But before we do, there's one important thing. You've probably been called closed off, difficult, someone who doesn't truly connect. But you're not closed off, you're not distant, and you are definitely not incapable of depth. What you do, this quiet observation, this silent presence, is the exact opposite of what people think it is. You are processing, and there is a massive difference between processing and avoiding. There's a researcher named Susan Cain. She wrote a book called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. Published in 2012, it spent 7 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And her central discovery changes everything. Introversion isn't shyness. It's not a personality flaw, it's a cognitive style, a different and completely valid way of processing the world. Around the same time, a psychologist named Elaine Aron was mapping out something even more specific. In 1996, she coined the term highly sensitive person. And what she discovered is that about 15 to 20% of the population picks up significantly more information from their environment per stimulus than the average person. These aren't passive minds. They operate with a much higher capacity for absorption. Psychology has a name for what you experience. It's called perceptual depth, observational acuity. Your brain isn't working less than others. It's processing more data, more layers, more signal. But where does this come from? We'll get into that part later, and it might completely change how you view your entire childhood. But there's a detail that almost always goes unnoticed. These aren't just traits, they're gifts, 3 of them to be exact. The first is pattern recognition. When you walk into a room, a conversation, a group setting, you're not just present, you're reading. You notice when someone says they're fine, but their body language says otherwise. You pick up on the tension between 2 people before a single word is spoken. You spot inconsistencies, micro-expressions, subtle shifts in tone of voice that most people don't even register. Why? Because talking consumes cognitive bandwidth. When someone is producing words, their brain is busy with the output formulating, choosing, performing. You, being quiet, have all that capacity directed toward input, toward observation, toward analysis. Neuroscience shows that people with this profile exhibit greater activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with deep attention, judgment, and complex pattern recognition. You're not ignoring the world, you're mapping it out. Do you see yourself in this? Think of a time you noticed something that no one else around you did. That feeling of reading between the lines while everyone else just read the headline. That isn't paranoia. That is precision. The second gift is emotional resonance. This goes beyond just noticing how people feel. You quietly absorb emotional data and process it deeply. You don't just notice that someone is frustrated, you feel the texture of that frustration, where it probably stems from, what lies beneath it. Elaine Aron spent decades researching exactly this. People with high sensory processing sensitivity aren't emotionally fragile. They are emotionally precise. Let that sink in for a moment. While everyone else is skimming the surface of a conversation, you're already 6 layers deep, understanding things that were never said out loud. You feel the weight of a silence. You notice when a word was chosen far too carefully. You can tell when someone is physically present but entirely absent in every other way. This isn't a weakness. It's a finely tuned instrument that most people simply don't have. And it's exactly because you absorb all of this in silence that the third gift exists. The third gift is signal discipline. You don't broadcast noise. When you speak, people listen because it's rare, because it carries weight, because words that are thrown around constantly lose their value, but words chosen with care become the benchmark. Adam Grant, an organizational psychologist at Wharton, researched the impact of introverted individuals in high-pressure environments. What he found contradicts everything the corporate world has always preached. Introverts frequently outperform extroverts in accuracy, deep listening, and reading complex dynamics. Not because they're smarter, but because they don't waste energy on unnecessary broadcasting. Think about it this way. In a world saturated with noise, on social media, in meetings, in everyday conversations, who makes the biggest impact? The one who talks all the time? Or the one who speaks when they have something to say? You speak when it matters. And exactly because of that, when you do speak, what you say sticks. But there's a hidden side to this. Not every observer is using these gifts freely. Some are still using observation as protection, and they don't know the difference between the two. We'll explore that shortly. But first, where does all this come from? There are two paths, and both are completely valid. The first is neurological. You might have been born with a nervous system that simply captures more per stimulus. This isn't a choice. It's your factory setting. About 30 to 40% of the population has a genuine introversion profile, according to Susan Cain's estimates. It's like the color of your eyes. It's simply who you are. The second path is developmental. Some people learn to observe as a survival skill. Imagine you grew up in an unpredictable environment, a home where someone's mood could change without warning, where reading the room wasn't a preference. It was a necessity, where being aware of what wasn't being said was what kept you safe, invisible, and out of trouble's way. Your nervous system learned far too early that information is protection. So you sharpened that tool. You got extraordinarily good at it. Not because there was something wrong with you, but because you were protecting something. This isn't damage, it's adaptation. And that's what changes how you look back, not as a flaw, but as the smartest system a young brain could build. Now comes the question no one asks openly. Are you still using this gift as a shield? Or have you learned to use it freely? Because there's a real difference between the two, and it defines everything. There's the observer who uses their quietness as a window. They sit in silence because they want to see more, understand more, absorb more. They consciously choose when to speak and when to stay quiet. This quietness is expansive. It's how they enter the world, with curiosity, with presence, with depth. And there's the observer who uses their quietness as a wall. They are quiet because speaking feels risky, because exposing themselves feels dangerous, because years ago, silence was what kept them invisible, and invisible meant safe. Observation turned into hypervigilance. Attention turned into tension disguised as introspection. Both observe, both are quiet. But the underlying motivation is completely different. Is your quietness a window or a wall? Is it how you absorb the world, or is it how you keep it out? Are you present in the silence, or are you hiding in it? Only you know. And what's rarely said about this is that both answers are understandable. If it's a window, you're using one of the rarest tools that exist. If it's a wall, it served you well. It played its part at one point. But you probably don't need to live behind it anymore. So here is your permission. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. You don't have a personality flaw that needs fixing. You are an observer. About 15 to 20% of people have this level of perceptual depth. You aren't rare in the sense of being wrong. You are rare in the sense of being precious. And those who have this recognize it in others when they find it. You have permission to stop explaining yourself for being quiet. If there's a moment you remember, a time when your silence let you see something no one else saw, feel something no one else noticed, or say something at the exact moment it needed to be said, leave it in the comments. I read them all. If you want more videos like this, subscribe and protect your peace.